Good evening, just gone 7pm on Tuesday, the 16th of February 2021. My name's Toby Lepati Mesme, and welcome to another edition of MesmePolitics, bringing you all the latest. We are with you for the next half hour, and coming up, Joe Biden's Ecuadorian soft coup. What is going on? Why is it bullshit? We discuss. Dominic Cummings' cronyism, the Tories' vision for Britain, and why Thatcherism won't revive the north of England, all on the way. Coming up in a minute, talk about Nicola Sturgeon's plans for a Scottish unlocking of schools. But right now, I want to talk to you about gay veterans. There's a story about gay veterans, and it's something that I thought we should talk about. So, gay and bisexual British veterans who were stripped of their medals because of their sexuality will now be able to reclaim them, the UK government has said, as it admitted their pre-2000 policy was a historical wrong. Only heterosexual people were allowed to serve in the British Armed Forces until the turn of the century, and troops whose sexuality was discovered often saw their honours removed before they were discharged. They can now apply to have them reinstated. It comes after a legal campaign by Falklands War veteran Joe Orsalis, who was forced from the Royal Navy in 1993 for being bisexual and who lived through poverty on his return to the country. He previously told the BBC that when his superiors discovered his sexuality, they cut the medal off his chest with a big pair of scissors. Boris Johnson today says those who serve in the armed forces deserve every recognition for their service. It was a very great injustice that this was denied to some members simply because of their sexuality. I hugely welcome the fact we can now address this historic wrong. LGBTQ groups have welcomed the move but urged the government to go further and address other consequences facing people who are discharged over their sexuality. And we can hear on, this is from 5 Live earlier, a former veteran who was dismissed from the military in 1997 for being gay, talking about why he deems this very important.
I had an exemplary record. You know, it was a case of, you know, I just got my promotion through, and I was just signed up for another 22 years. So there was no question about my ability to do the job.
Or commitment to the force. It's just.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So who were you a threat to, or to what? Were you a threat to the image of service?
That is a very good question.
Or were you a threat to other officers?
But back in the day, I mean, I challenged it, and I wrote to Tony Blair, I wrote to the MOD, and I wrote to my local MP, Greg Stringer, to ask these very questions. And the response I got back was it was just the way that the government, they hadn't made it a priority, and the government deemed it that if you were homosexual, you were incompatible to service life. And they actually felt that they'd done me a justice, because if it had been just a couple of months earlier, I could have gone to military prison for 6 months. Instead, they ended up suspending me for 6 months while they went through that process. And what I also didn't get that most people would get is, you know, I was marched off that camp within 10 minutes. I wasn't able to say goodbye to anybody. This is now, I've lost my job, I've lost my career. You know, my family, I felt I'd let them all down. At the age of 24, after being involved with something that you've done for 6 years that you have loved and you feel so passionate, I still miss it to this day, and I still have reoccurring dreams to go back into the Air Force.
I'm sorry. You almost lost the medal you'd received for saving that pilot, or for rescuing that pilot.
Yeah, because that was and I don't really understand, because you've earned that medal. You've served Queen and country. You've done everything you can do. There is that ruling about not being a homosexual in the Air Force, and that's another thing.
There's a lot to talk about here. So, a few things. First of all, you can be against war, be against imperial injustice, be against all of the principles and motives upon which the armed forces, the British Armed Forces, were founded. You can even be against the existence of the British Armed Forces, a position I would be very sympathetic to. However, taking in all that, you can still want this injustice put right. There have been massive homophobic currents in the British military historically and up to this day. It is important and vital to see that addressed. It's surface level, but it's important. Very often, the most hideous actions by militaries come from the command. Culpability of troops on the ground can't be ignored. Many of them are morally have committed morally abhorrent acts that cannot be justified. However, we do need to look at this in the sense of very often it is those at the top rather than working class people at the bottom who ended up going into the military, because that offers them steady income, support for their family, and all those sort of things. Meanwhile, Nicola Sturgeon is bringing in an unlocking. She's confirmed a phased return to school for younger pupils will start from Monday. This will include preschool children, pupils in primaries 1, 2 and 3, and a limited number of secondary students who need to carry out practical assignments. Let's have a listen to Nicola Sturgeon, First Minister of Scotland, here.
I will, however, confirm that the phased and gradual return to school that I said we were hopeful about when I updated Parliament 2 weeks ago will go ahead as planned from Monday. I'll say more about that and also about the importance of carefully implementing and monitoring that change later. In addition, I'll give an assessment of the current state of the pandemic, and I will signal when and how we do hope to give an indication of the criteria for beginning our exit from lockdown and the order in which we will be aiming to do so when the time is right. Firstly, though, I'll briefly recap on today's statistics. The total number of positive cases yesterday was 773, which is 6% of all tests carried out, and means that the overall number of cases is now 193,148. 1,383 people are in hospital, which is 45 fewer than yesterday, and 100 people are in intensive care, which is 2 fewer than yesterday. I regret to report that in the past 24 hours, though, a further 49 deaths were registered of patients who first tested positive over the previous 28 days, and the total number of deaths under this daily measurement is now 6,764. And once again, my condolences go to everyone who has lost a loved one.
A sensible and pragmatic approach to reopening from the Scottish Government, from Nicola Sturgeon. Cases are down even more than they are here. Deaths are down even more than they are here. Therefore, completely right, completely justified to go ahead with the unlocking of schools. It is so crucial. They're doing it in a sensible manner. Support obviously needs to be there for all the stakeholders involved, children, parents, and teachers, especially, who are on the front lines with minimal protection. But good. Meanwhile, the government is to introduce legislation that will enable academics, students, or visiting speakers who are no-platformed to sue universities for compensation when they feel they have suffered because of free speech infringement. The proposal is one of a range of legal measures put forward by the Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson, as part of the government's manifesto commitment to protect free speech and academic freedom in universities in England. However, critics warn the legislation will be fraught with difficulties and fiercely opposed by many, including the University and College Union, which accused the government of fighting phantom threats to free speech rather than addressing the COVID crisis in higher education. Exemplified by this here, Vice President of the National Union of Students.
And I don't feel that there has been evidence that that has been happening, especially on a widespread level. And I think our view of it is that we don't feel that it's necessary for all of these measures to be put in when there's already work going on. But actually, and quite frankly, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and it's bizarre to us that the government's focus is on this as opposed to supporting students who are in hardship right now, financial hardship, and uncertain of their educational futures. And
I think we can all agree with that. It's so much further down the list of priorities. It is not the threat, the bogeyman that the right are making out. Therefore, Vice President of the National Union of Students, Hilary Gaebi Ababio, is right. I think absolutely right there. It's bizarre culture war crap from the government. They like to do this. This is what they want to do. Stoke those divisions. Obviously, what the government is doing is basically, and they're doing it with history as well at the moment, they're going, if you disagree with our narrative on history or free speech, we're going to restrict your free speech. The real threat to free speech is coming from government overreach here. It's clearly being used as a stick to beat progressives with, rather than genuine concern for free speech. If you're really worried about free speech, constitutionally guarantee free speech in Britain. Do that. Do something useful about it. Confected outrage, astroturfing from elites, talking about an elite institution, trampling on the most vulnerable and dissenting voices, basically. That's all this is. This is not looking up for the little guy. This is pretending to look up for the little guy while inadvertently trampling on that very same little guy. Over to the United States. And there may be a soft coup in Ecuador. This is from Ben Norton on Twitter, who works with the Grey Zone News, and it sort of sums it up much better than me. So the US is blatantly meddling in Ecuador's election to try to stop the popular socialist candidate who won the first round in a landslide from becoming president. Here is the US State Department applauding a bogus recount overseen by a coup-plotting OAS and corrupt electoral council. Truly dystopian, the US State Department is depicting election theft as transparency. The first round results were clear. Leftist Aruas won by 13%. They're doing a recount to change the numbers, so US-backed Trojan horse candidate Yaku Perez is no longer in third. Beyond absurd, the OAS oversaw a far-right military coup in Bolivia in 2019, spreading false accusations of fraud. The OAS supported coup attempts in Venezuela and Nicaragua. But the US State Department is thanking it for supposedly supporting democracy. This comes from Julia Chung, Acting Assistant Secretary for the US Department of State's Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs. She says the US government applauds the February 12th announcement by... what I was reading to you has disappeared from the screen. The February 12th announcement to verify votes in 17 provinces in Ecuador's February 7th presidential election. That's from CNE, the Consejo Nacional Electoral del Ecuador. This allows the electoral process to advance with enhanced guarantees to the candidates and citizens alike. Such transparency with clear rules and in the presence of party representatives, plus national and international observers, ensures public confidence in the results. The verification should begin quickly and the second round guaranteed according to the electoral calendar. We thank OAS election observation teams for their continuing work supporting democracy in Ecuador. This is from Zai_Squirrel. I know it's a funny username, but they have some really good analysis of Western imperialism. Joe Biden hasn't been in office a month and he's already plotting a coup in Ecuador because the leftist candidate won the first round of voting. And guess which organisation is their proxy? That's right, the same OAS which is used as a front to organise the coup in Bolivia. The OAS is an arm of the CIA. It is a fascist institution that must be uprooted and destroyed. Any country it touches turns into a US puppet regime. Former leftist president of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, who supports Arras, the leftist presidential candidate who won the first round, speaks out against US regime's coup-mongering here, saying, "Let Ecuadorians solve problems for Ecuadorians. In the shameful presidential election, because of Trump, would they have accepted interference from another country? In addition, everything is the fault of the puppet that they have sustained for 4 years. Dignity will soon return to Ecuador." And this is from Open Democracy. In a world of post-truth politics, a false media narrative based on the OAS's flawed statistics was instrumental in overthrowing a democratically elected government in Bolivia. And now we see the same tropes, the same lies, the same deceit being deployed in Ecuador. The OAS is a puppet. Its lies continue to be parroted by mainstream media outlets in the West with faux Orwellian decrees of the upholding of democracy, which is the exact opposite of what's going on here. The Biden administration is deploying Trumpian tactics that it so despises at home abroad. Meanwhile, at home, it's manufacturing consent. It really is genuinely Orwellian. Because in a few months, when this all comes out, we'll all be told, oh, it was a mistake. You know, they keep doing it again and again and again, right all over the world. It's all lies. Most citizens in the West's entire worldview is completely shaped on lies from our governments. Imperialist, Western-centric lies, a complete failure to comprehend what life is actually like outside the West, what life is like in the Third World, what life is like in South America, what life is like in Asia, in China, in Russia. A complete misinterpretation and falsification of what the reality is on the ground in all those places, and how Europe, Britain, America are actually viewed around the world, and how their actions are actually interpreted, reported upon, and viewed around the world. We have a completely warped worldview. Anyone progressive, remotely progressive, has to speak out on this now. Before it gets worse, before it turns into anything. If you shine a light on it, you shame them out of doing anything, out of continuing with this witch hunt. Speak out now, shine a light on it, and the US backs off. Basically, because the US and their proxies only care about images, right? You can stop atrocities, you can stop skullduggery. If you have any commitment to progressive values, any commitment to sovereignty, and any commitment to democracy. Any of those things. I like to think most people have a commitment to at least one of those things. Hopefully all of them. You will speak out. You will shine a light on this. This can be halted. It demonstrates the priorities of the new administration more than anything. It's not likely to turn into a full coup. But it's just the worrying noises we're hearing. It demonstrates the priorities. It demonstrates that the Biden administration is perfectly happy to bully and intimidate leftist candidates and governments in South America like the big bully boys they always have been. And they should be condemned for all eternity for that. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders is talking about the anti-democratic principles of the Republican Party, quite ironically. But still, have a listen.
When you look at what happened over the impeachment and what you hear now from Republicans, Senator Graham has, once again found love for the former president and seems to be gushing about, his power over the party. Republicans are talking about impeaching Kamala Harris in 2022 if they took back power. How is unity possible with this kind of rhetoric? I mean, with the former president still being head of the party.
Anderson, in my view, and I'm not alone in believing this, the Republican Party is going to have to make a simple decision. The debate of today is not about healthcare. It's not about climate change, not about education. It is, in fact, whether the Republican Party believes in democracy or whether they're going to continue to believe in the big lie. You may recall that during the impeachment trial, I asked Trump's attorneys whether, in fact, they believe that Biden won the election or whether they believe that Trump won a landslide victory. They refused to answer that question. So either the Republican Party will be the party of the big lie, the party of conspiracy theories, or the party of racism and divisiveness, and by the way, the party of violence, or else it will be, as it has traditionally been, a conservative party operating within the framework of a democracy. That is what Republicans are going to have to decide in terms of their future. And obviously, I would hope that the leadership and ordinary Republicans understand that people fought and died to protect American democracy. We don't believe in an authoritarian government run by one person, Trump, or anybody else. We believe in the rule of law. That is a decision the Republicans are going to have to make. And I'm going to do everything that I can, not only fighting for working families, but fighting for democracy.
Get in touch in the chat at any point with your thoughts on everything we're talking about. This is MesmePolitics, bringing you all the latest for your Tuesday evening in UK and US politics from a leftist perspective. I'm your host, and my name is Toby Lepati Mesme. A quick 30-second clip here of David Davis in Parliament going through a freedom of speech bill. It gave you a little summary of the sort of arguments being put forth around this, of course, is the similar principles of what the government's saying now.
The refusal of platforms to people you disagree with is damaging to us all. Imagine if their censorious predecessors in the established churches had been successful in their attempt to suppress Galileo and Darwin. People would still believe the earth was the centre of the universe, or that the human species was created on the sixth day from clay. Of course, the ideas were ridiculous, but such falsehoods were only conquered through the freedom to speak truth to power, to shine.
David Davis has no interest in speaking truth to power. Meanwhile, Labour has asked the government and the Conservative Party to publish details of meetings that ministers, MPs and officials held with Tory-linked companies that were subsequently awarded public contracts connected to coronavirus, saying the information was vital for public trust. In an escalation of Labour's efforts over what it says is rampant cronyism in the awarding of public contracts during the pandemic, the party has written to Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary and Tory party co-chair, Amanda Milling. It comes a day after a court hearing examining how Downing Street awarded a £564,000 research contract without tender, which heard that Dominic Cummings was central to the decision to give that work to a company that just happened to be run by two long-standing associates of him. Last week, the Shadow Cabinet Office Minister, Rachel Reeves, said that the government, said that in government, Labour would follow a policy of insourcing as a means to ending cronyism, saying Boris Johnson's government was rife with conflicts of interest. John Holstead says, was watching the White House briefing and some of the comments are weird. US has mega problems for sure. Oh yeah. They've had those mega problems for a very long time now, but it's really coming to a climax. And over the next few years, it's going to be fascinating. Also quite harrowing to witness where all of that goes. On Cummings, blatant corruption is going on here. And they're getting away with it. And they continue to get away with it. It's good Labour is pushing on this. The problem is there's such sort of an anti-politics vibe out there at the moment of people really not being into politics. People are failing to pick it up. They're going, oh, they're all the same. Keep hammering it. Good. That's what Labour should be doing, and it's Rachel Reeves has taken a strong line on it, and that is, of course, good. Meanwhile, the government should launch sweeping reforms of competition laws to improve consumer confidence, lower costs for businesses, and boost the UK economy after Brexit, according to a leading Tory MP. Calling for changes in a report published on Tuesday, John Penrose, a prominent backbench MP, said the Competition and Markets Authority regulator needed more power to be given tougher penalties to companies that do not cooperate fully in investigations. Saying the CMA must consider how to improve transparency of the price consumers are paying through their data for digital goods and services so they can make informed choices about whether each one represents good value or not, and whether they wish to switch to others which might be better. Kwasi Kwarteng, the Business Secretary, said the government would consider the findings of the review, saying the UK's competition laws and institutions are highly regarded across the globe. However, as we build back better from the pandemic and start life as an independent trading nation, we have a golden opportunity to strengthen that reputation. Now, of course, this is all very worrying, just the way they say things. You can't trust them on these sort of things. John says government costs on the contract case are 5 times higher than normal public money, mainly to intimidate those bringing the case. Bully boy tactics, absolutely agree. Someone has to stop them, and if legal means are the way we do that, you know, the Good Law Project are doing some really good work on this. Good. So this is right, I think. The calls to essentially, hold these people to account. I think on regulation, on the economy, the government really has to look in the mirror. We heard talk over the last few days about basically using Thatcherism to save communities from the ravaging that they experienced of Thatcherism. What's that about? What does that mean? How's that meant to fly? That's what they're trying to do. By the look of things, they're trying to use the same old methods of deregulation and of a race to the bottom and sell those as a surface level achievement to working class communities in the north of England that were deindustrialised and that suffered at the hands of those very same policies. What's that about? What on earth is that about? Will it work? It could. I think the Tories should stop using the damaging policies to fix the damage that they wrought on this country. The Tories have a really fascinating strategy going ahead. And James Meadway on Twitter was talking about this today. A really sort of fascinating blend of something resembling state corporatism that they're going to be using over the next few years. Higher investment, high state spending, a breach with the neoliberal orthodoxy, but only to further neoliberal priorities and the priorities of the 1%. But a very compelling political project. And unless there is a serious reckoning with the genuine, threat, the Tories... Someone said yesterday on Twitter, the Tory party, right now, where we are shaping the future. And the Labour Party is stuck. Here's the tweet. The Conservative Party is shaping the future. The Labour Party are trapped in a fever dream preparing for an election which happened 24 years ago. It's true. The Tories, whatever you think of their vision will be harmful for millions of people. But they are shaping the future. And much like the 1980s, they're winning. Unless there's a serious reckoning with how to take on the Johnson project, the Tories easily have power in this country, big majority power, until at least the 2030s. We need a real reckoning with that. We need a real reckoning with the real big shifts, ideological concessions the Tories are making, or we pay the price. Here's a Sky News report on vaccination in Israel as the jabs trigger a 94% drop in infections, which is huge. I'll tell you what I think after this.
Just how long will it be until this is within reach for us all? The beach in Tel Aviv is beginning to come back to life as Israel leads the global vaccine race. Some say this is far too quick, a foolish rush for normality. The country is certainly a test case for the world. Through the course of this pandemic, Israel seems to have been just ahead of everyone else. The first to lock down hard in March last year, the first to emerge from a lockdown way too quickly, it turned out. There are plenty of lessons to learn from here, both positive and negative. The Israeli vaccine program has been an unquestionable success. They are now vaccinating everyone over the age of 16. 40% of the country has been jabbed. But look at this, empty chairs that experts here say countries globally should be prepared for, because younger generations, it seems, are less interested in the vaccine.
Vaccination rate has gotten considerably slower, and that's the concern here right now, how to convince young, healthy people to get vaccinated. The sooner the better.
The good news is that the real-world data here shows that the vaccines are working. There are fewer older people in hospital, but worryingly, more younger ones. On the other side of the city, the Sheba Medical Center is the country's largest hospital. Inside, again, we found the vaccine centers empty. Here, they've been forced to take the vaccines out to the community.
And then this is the challenge, this is the iceberg.
Dr. A.L. Leshem will be briefing the Scottish government this week. There is global interest in Israel's experience.
You really need to convince them. You need to prepare the communication, move to work in social media, move and work with community leaders.
So, Israel, various reasons. There are myriad moral issues with the Israeli vaccine rollout because the fact it's basically implementing vaccine apartheid. However, it does show us the vaccinations are clearly working really well. This is the only real example we have of that right now. This is working. Cases are falling. The vaccination program is going great. The rollout's going great. The next thing that happens is the immunity starts kicking in. Be cautious. Be careful. Let's make this work. Let's make this the last unlocking we have to deal with. That can be done. Let's hunker down. Really hope they don't fuck it up this time. Alright, that's it from me. I am back tomorrow for your Wednesday edition of MesmePolitics. I've been Toby Lepati Mesme. Please subscribe, like the video, and I will see you same time, same place tomorrow. Make sure you put notifications on. We will be back with more of the same, but just that little bit different tomorrow from 7 p.m. Email me between then and now, tobyjoshua2004@gmail.com, with any suggestions for the show. Get me on Twitter @TobyJoshuaUK, or of course, read my daily Medium pieces @TobyJoshuaPolitics. Thanks for listening, thanks for getting involved. You have been brought up to date with all the latest in UK and US politics from a leftist perspective. Speaking truth to power, I'll see you tomorrow.